Marc Kramer, Senior Lecturer of Entrepreneurship and host and founder of Asian Founders and Funders. Today, our guest is Aaron Everhart, partner at Draper Startup House. Aaron, welcome.
Welcome. It's a pleasure to be here, Mark.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. So, Aaron, let's start off with you just telling us about your background and how you got to where you are now.
Okay, sure. I have an early career in communication services. Specifically, I worked for a brand consultancy and we did corporate branding, and my role was verbal branding and naming. I'm also a lifelong entrepreneur. And so at a certain point, after about 10 years working in San Francisco, I wanted to live and work abroad, and I came to Vietnam. And seeing opportunity, I decided I would move here and open my own agency. And along the way, I opened some other businesses in Vietnam. And at one point, I opened an entrepreneurship program along with 4 other Vietnamese people. And that grew 2x every year through 2018. And then we decided to look abroad, and we partnered with Draper Startup House in 2021. And now we help Vietnamese startups reach global venture capital and markets. And finally, I also, there was one more little thing. I also represent Kilsa Global, which is a Singaporean-based market entry services company helping companies enter Vietnam.
So before we get into Draper Startup House and some of what you've done in the past, what are some of the startups that you founded and how did that go? And what did you learn from it?
Well, I began selling whistles and magazines in the schoolyard when I was in grade school, and I made quite a bit of spare money from my candy habit. Later on, I opened a pinback badge company. These were popular in the 70s.
Yes.
Like, I love mom. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, I've always just been enterprising in that way. I tried to open a hosted exchange service in the mid 90s and was advised by the Small Business Association Service Corps of Retired Executives mentor that I shouldn't do it. And I really appreciated the advice, and that stuck in my mind. And later, when I came to Vietnam, I realized the country didn't really have any kind of entrepreneurship programs. We decided to start Hatch program to kind of serve as a small business association in the same way that I was served when I was young. And in Vietnam, I started a restaurant, a gift company, a communications company, and of course Hatch, which is now Draper Startup House. But as in my role as Hatch and Draper, I have mentored probably close to 200 startups. Some of them have done well. I don't know if you've heard of Lost Ship, because you see them around on the street a lot. That's one of my mentees. And yeah, long list of mentees.
So why Vietnam? I mean, you could have picked any other country in the world. Why did you choose Vietnam? And how many years ago was it that you came here?
I came in 2005. I was invited. A former colleague of mine who left our branding agency and wanted to work in public health ended up in Hanoi. And she wanted help with a brand for an NGO, a local NGO that she was setting up to address HIV prevention communication. And so I came out here just to help her with the brand. It was a 6-week sort of like volunteer working holiday. And as soon as I arrived, I was just found it fascinating to be here and exciting. And there's a lot of optimism, and people were just really pleased to learn about my craft. And it was new, and there seemed to be a lot of growth potential. So I decided, why not move here? And that's what I did.
And what makes Vietnam unique, and how is Vietnam different than the other Asian countries? Because I'm sure you visited all the others.
I have. Well, the region has a shared history, but Vietnam has a unique history in terms of its resilience and its fight for independence. Someone pointed out to me recently that the Kingdom of Thailand has never had a war actually on its land or been involved directly in a war. But, Vietnam is different. It's had a lot of struggles over the years for Vietnamese people to be independent from the control and dominance of other nations. And the other reasons is it's got a growing young population. It has incredible potential as a producer of agriculture. I think that is yet to even begun to be tapped into. But also, Vietnamese people are known for very high math scores, and then there's a lot of IT outsourcing companies that have been here for years, quietly doing the really hard work for all kinds of outsourcing companies, which are domiciled, especially in Japan. And so these tech outsourcing people are starting to realize I can create my own software. And so we're starting to see a lot of founders coming out of the outsourcing industry. Plus, we're seeing a lot of overseas Vietnamese, as they're called, coming back to Vietnam because they're finding conditions in their in their countries in the West not to be super pleasant at the moment, and they're coming back to Vietnam to set up companies. So super exciting time.
What what are some of Vietnam's greatest advantages, and why should entrepreneurs from the West locate to Vietnam, and why should some of the Vietnamese who are making these very nice salaries back in the United States, Canada, and England, why should they come back here now?
I think it's all about growth potential, and also stability. We have a politically stable country. We don't have too many social problems which are impacting business per se. And um, yeah, compared to other choices around the world, Vietnam looks pretty nice. It also has an incredibly great trade relationships with Australia, with Europe, with China, with the United States, and all of these conditions make it an attractive place. And due to some of the complicated issues with manufacturing in other parts of the world, a lot of manufacturing, particularly semiconductor manufacturing industries, targeting Vietnam as places to set up tomorrow's factories.
Yeah, I was wondering about um, companies moving here and what are the skill sets that Vietnam needs to develop in order for it to really take advantage? Because we see now all the time, especially US companies coming here and looking at Vietnam as more as the best place in Asia to put a plant and to have their Asian headquarters.
That's a really good question. And I have some data which is insightful. So University of California, Davis professor did a research 2 years ago, and I was involved. I was supporting him to meet the CEOs and HRDs of 20 US multinational corporations operating in Vietnam. And we endeavored to ask them, what is the skills gap between the recent graduates and their needs in the job place? And we interviewed all of these people, and we learned that the skills gaps are like leadership, creative thinking, collaboration, and critical thinking. So these are the kinds of things, and these soft skills are the things that seem to be missing from the recent graduates. But I think that nowadays universities are addressing it. So perhaps this time, universities, especially like VinUniversity or some of the universities from overseas, which are setting up campus here, they're beginning to, include soft skills and these kinds of trainings and leadership with the students. So I think the future is bright, but maybe the current graduates are lacking these skills. They just need to ramp it up through um, workshops or certificate stacking, as they call it. I think these things will help augment and take away some of the burden of soft skills training that corporations are having for the new recruits. And some of the issue also has to do with culture. Um, you're not really supposed to confront authorities or persons older than you culturally, but these kinds of things can be changed. Corporate culture can be different from general culture, and businesses are starting to see this. People can differentiate between how they should behave at home and how they can behave at work. And so the last thing I would say is probably English. One of the things that differentiates Vietnam from India in my own travels is that in India, people are speaking English, and their English acumen is excellent. In Vietnam, I think we have some area of growth there.
And hence why all these English language learning centers
Indeed.
dotted throughout Vietnam, and the parents have been pushing for their kids to learn English, although there's been pushback by teachers not wanting English as a mainstream language, but the parents are definitely pushing for it in order for Vietnam to be competitive in the marketplace. And Vietnam has 8 major problems. One of it is 70% of the college students end up leaving here and going to living abroad. And of course, we want to change it. Hence, one of the reasons we're doing this show is to help move that around. Why
Yeah.
is it, and Deloitte Touche put this number out, that 62% of the CEOs are women in this country? And there's no country on the planet that has that kind of percentage of women leaders. Why is that here?
Oh, it's kind of hard to answer that question because I don't really have any data. And I like answering questions when I have data. I do know that the country embraces women leadership. I know that women leaders are effective. I know they're respected. I know they're celebrated. And I know that I personally have really enjoyed working with many of them. And but exactly why Vietnam is different from other countries, I'm not sure. I do know that I do know that there's, issues with gender balance and inclusion across the world. And I've worked with the Vietnam Women's Union before on some projects in the past, and I just think that women have their groups and their clubs, they're dynamic, they're powerful, they're respected. I would say, though, at a certain level of society here, we're still male dominated. I still think that women work harder than men, in my observation here.
Yeah.
And I've had off-record conversations with executives who we were discussing hiring, and off the record, we had some discussion around the area of that, yeah, maybe maybe a woman might be a better choice for a particular position we were discussing. I don't like having that thought. I'd rather interview someone not knowing their gender or even looking at their face, but we don't have systems for doing that these days. But we do think we should look into the skills and the experiences and the education, and perhaps women are pursuing that more than men in this country.
So Draper Startup House, how do you help these startups? What's your process and methodology for working with them? And what kind of outcomes have you had so far?
Okay, around the world, Draper Startup House has 25 locations, and we're all independent franchisees. And each one of us is, kind of determines what our market needs. And here in Vietnam, a lot of the needs of the early stage startups are being filled by local ecosystem organizations like BK Holdings or university accelerators like FIIS at Foreign Trade University. There's entrepreneurship programs at RMIT, at FTU, and these programs, which are actually mandated by the central government, are supporting early stage startups with education at the basic level, like lean startup and these kinds of things, design thinking, etc. So right now, Draper Startup House is filling the gap for those Vietnamese startups who want to interact with international potential co-founders, mentors, and investors. And so what we do is we organize events and we invite our community of local and international people. And we're finding that people living and working here that are international or interacting with local startups and supporting each other. We have some exciting groups like an AI meetup group. In the past, we had a blockchain meetup group. And so I guess you could say that we're just facilitating connections. Our 3 values are connect, inspire, and empower. And that's what we're trying to do. And primarily at this moment, we're doing that through events. However, Draper Startup House does have a product. It's called Fundamentals of Entrepreneurship, and it is a 10-day course. It's hybrid, online, offline. And the end result is a certificate from Draper University in San Mateo, California. And the winner of each cohort gets a scholarship to Draper University. So for 2025, we're considering some new programming with some more educational products to fill some of the gaps that we see. One thing that we're doing more often than not lately is inbound university students and business study tours. People coming to this country, they want to learn more about the economy, the culture, and they want to visit companies. And so we just finished a 10-day intensive boot camp in partnership with Hex International, which is a Melbourne-based um, kind of innovation services company. And we just had a fantastic time in Ho Chi Minh City, bringing these 11 founders through an intensive program from idea to pitch. And our final pitch, we brought some local venture capitalists and angel investors, and it was a fantastic night. We haven't posted the recap video on our social media yet, but we will very soon.
Yeah, you're involved in our program, and we have a global exchange program that does just that, what you just described. And we have 66 entrepreneurs coming from Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. And we've had Stanford and other folks come through here. So yeah, we find those programs to be incredibly valuable. Is there a cost for startups to enter your program?
Yeah, the fundamentals of entrepreneurship course has a price tag around 1,200 US. I think we have some special pricing for Vietnam. We haven't put this up. We haven't promoted this yet, but we will soon. So please, anyone who's interested should just stay in touch, watch our socials, or join Draper Entrepreneur Network. That's den.draperstartuphouse.com. And one kind of interesting factoid is Draper Entrepreneur Network is evolving into a new name we're calling Draper Nation. And we're embracing this concept of virtual nationhood. So people can be thinking of our community as being, something very cohesive and supporting and providing different kinds of services, especially for remote workers and digital nomads, because this is an emerging trend in the world of work.
What does it take to be an entrepreneur today, a successful entrepreneur? What skill sets do they need?
I think good communication skills is really paramount. Being able to articulate yourself clearly. So many entrepreneurs and of course are engineers or scientists, inventors, people who figure out how to, do an old thing in a better way. And they may be excellent technically, but they may not have so much strength in the area of developing a brand or communicating in simple language what their product or service does. And also they may have trouble attracting a team of founders. And so I think I would start with number one, understand what your weakness is, and then find and surround yourself with people who are better than you are, the things the business needs. Work towards the point where you're working on the business, not in it. And I would say that's very important. But however, let's go all the way back to the very beginning. There is nothing more important than research. Most startup founders are what I call flying blind. Imagine they're in an aircraft and they're spending a lot of time fussing with an issue with the landing gear not dropping down in preparation for a landing, but they're not paying attention to the other flight controls and noticing the fact that they might be losing altitude. Here's the issue. They think there's a market for their idea and they don't do enough research to find out if there truly is. And I'm a big fan of some of the knowledge that has been provided by some folks at Georgia Tech in the United States, which is this concept of authentic demand. And that means you really have tested and you really know that there is truly demand for your product before you go to market. Because so many times entrepreneurs are spending their life savings or their family's savings or selling their assets to start a company, and they haven't done enough research to find out if there's really a market for whatever they want to sell. And so that's the most important thing. And I think that doing research is something that is not fun. It's rigorous. It's embarrassing. We have to put ourselves out there and do one-on-one interviews with people. it's a lot of work, a lot of scheduling, and then once you get all the interview data, you have to compile it all and look for the insights. A lot of people just don't want to take the time to do that for the number of times that they should do it to have a statistically reliable outcome, because we only know if the population will accept something if we reach certain statistical minimums, right? And so we need to do at least 120 interviews, and based on the insights from the interviews, we should develop a questionnaire, and then we should do at least 1,200 questionnaires in order for us to know whether or not we have the statistical probability of there being demand for our product or service in the market. And so anyone who's interested in this idea of how to do better research ought to look into talking to the people at Asia Plus. Q and Me is their sub brand. They do research with mobile platform. And Kengo, the CEO, is actually a former mentee, and he came through the incubation program of Hatch many, many years ago, and he's been very successful with his research company. So if you want some support on research, you should definitely reach out to them. One of the wonderful things that Q and Me Asia does is they publish on their website free syndicate reports in all kinds of industries in Vietnam. For example, men versus women, as we were talking about, or consumers and electronic phones, and they publish these syndicate reports. And so there's a lot of them on their website, and you can take a look at it and learn a lot of this from this general market research from a top-down approach. But also, finally, you've got to do your own bottom-up research and get out there, get out of your office, get off your phone, and interview people directly.
So what should they expect to spend in doing this market research? So they have an idea, before they even go in this direction. Here's what you're going to be spending, both in dollars that you'd be hiring maybe someone to do it, and realistically in time. Because I think every entrepreneur, they wake up with the idea and they go, okay, I'm ready to jump right in. And they don't do these things that you've just suggested. So what should be their expectation?
I think that if they were going to hire an agency to do one-on-one in-depth interviews, it's probably going to cost in the range of $1,000 per interview. Now, for your average startup, that's an impossibility, right? So they got to do it on their own. You got to just round up some volunteers or some interns, some people who are willing to support you, and do these interviews on your own. The interview need not be long, and it shouldn't have closed-ended questions. Just ask your interviewees, what's the biggest challenge you were facing the last time you were, and then fill in the blank with the situation in which your product or service would be a solution. So
Yeah. And by
hit
the way,
rewind and listen to what I said again.
yeah,
Anyone who's hearing this now, it's very important. Open-ended question. Then if people repetitively say, oh, I wish this, or this is my challenge, and that challenge is something that your product or service would support, now you know you have some authentic demand. But don't get too excited. Don't sell yet. Tell them, I'm working on a solution to the challenge that you just told me. Would it be okay if I come back to you later with my solution? 9 times out of 10, they will say, yeah, I would love to hear about it. Now you got your first person in your sales funnel.
potential salesperson,
Yeah.
absolutely potential sales. When someone's making a pitch to investors, what are the key things that they need to do, and what are the biggest mistakes that you see entrepreneurs make when presenting to investors?
I think that when we're presenting to investors, it's a very highly charged meeting, emotionally charged meeting, a lot of excitement, a lot of anticipation, a lot of fear. I think the best founders relax. Investors are humans. They're really looking for people who have evidence that in the past that they have accomplishments. And your past evidence of accomplishments is the best indicator of you being able to pull off running this startup idea to market. So it's really about just being confident, really understanding your market, being able to answer the questions clearly and articulately. And if you can't, say, I don't know. That's a great question. let me find out and get back to you. And just be real, just be relaxed, because investors can read personalities very well. They listen to pitches all the time, every day. And at the end of the day, I think they have a feeling within the first 2 minutes if this person is even worth listening to for the next 10 minutes. And so I would say practice pitching, video yourself pitching, and pitch in front of other people and get their feedback. Don't pitch in front of your friends and parents. They're only going to tell you nice things. Pitch in front of a mentor, a teacher, a professor, or a venture capitalist and say you want to do a test pitch and say, look, give me brutal feedback. Tell me the truth. And one thing I also tell founders is make sure that you're well groomed, your shoes are shined, and you have other signals of being a presentable, well organized, leader like person. So that's my basic and quick advice.
Is presenting in Asia and in particular Vietnam different than presenting to investors in the West, and how so?
That's a great question, but I'm not sure I can answer it because I've been here for 20 years. I do go to pitches in the region, but I don't think I've been to a pitch in the United States, my home country, in a really long time. However, I do catch them on the news, and I do, sorry, not on the news, but on video on YouTube. And I do notice there's more confidence, better articulation, and I also think that Shark Tank is highly influenced pitching, and I think a lot of people they've found this kind of formulaic approach to pitching, which is kind of like a Shark Tank formula. It's okay, it's predictable, it works, but if you're too formulaic and it looks like you're just emulating or trying to channel some other famous speaker, like the one who wears jeans and turtlenecks, don't do it. Just be yourself. Don't
Right.
artificially lower your voice. Just be you. And one of the best ways to be yourself is to practice. Practice pitching again and again and again until you just can do it without even thinking about it.
And so when now that people are trying to raise money, these startups, how important is it for them to already have revenue? Because like 20 years ago, angels were investing in startups with no revenue. And I'm not talking about biotechnology, where revenue is a decade away. But for most all the other industries that you're in, um, even angels don't seem to be investing in pure startups with no revenue that you have to show that somebody's willing to eat the dog food. How important is that here also in Asia? And how competitive is it to raise capital here?
Well, I think in general, if you want to attract um, funding, you need to have some kind of traction. But it depends upon the stage of the company. Obviously, you may need some investment before you have a product. So that area of investing is your friends, your family, a bank loan, or sell that $5,000 motorbike that you don't really need to have. Um, what we ought to do is just understand that money follows opportunity. And so I believe that the founders should focus on creating opportunity, and that opportunity can be expressed either as authentic demand, evidenced by doing good research, that's investable, or you have, um, I lost my train of thought, authentic demand, evidenced by research, or, oh, sorry, it's intellectual property. You have something patentable. I do know some founders who don't patent, but they could. The reason why they don't is because once you go into the patent application process, your idea is made public. It's a matter of time before any idea is copied. So when you patent, maybe you want to do that when you register your patent, maybe you want to do that a little bit later. But if you've done the patent research and you can prove to your investors that you do have intellectual property, which is unfair advantage, that's investable. So really, it's just about creating opportunity. Like money will flow there. A lot of people say that it's difficult to raise money right now, and I'm saying I don't think it's any more difficult than any other time. Um, you just need to create the opportunity. The money will flow there. What's different now is that investors are not spreading money, and we call it spray and pray. They're not just spending a lot of money in a lot of startups hoping that one of them will win. That kind of behavior is not happening so much anymore.
Yeah, I think that's 20 years ago that
Yeah.
happened, and
Well, it
hasn't
kind of
happened
still, I think it
since
still happens with some of the bigger funds. Um, they
because
have,
they have to put the money to work.
yeah, they have to invest, and they have these deadlines, and they have to close the fund, and they might be making some decisions a little bit more softly than individuals or angels.
Is
And the
there?
thing about angels, I
Mhm.
interrupted you, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Oh, I wanted to just follow on about angels. In Vietnam, there isn't really this concept of the angel investor. It's kind of a new thing. We tried to start angel investing groups, I think nearly 10 years ago. We organized some angel investing training, and we got some people coming out, but we didn't really see any groups form organically, which is what we were hoping for. And I think that the issue with that is, again, having negative cash flow in an investment is something that local angels or would-be investors are not used to. The idea of the hockey stick growth chart is not something that people really are willing to tolerate. I think that's changing, though. What's happening is we have some overseas Vietnamese who do get the idea of pre-rev investing, and so they're starting to look around. They're coming to my events and asking me, do you know any startups you can introduce me to? They're at the early stage. And so I think, it's starting to change. I think the future is very bright in this country. Just from today, the next 10 years can be very interesting and very exciting. That's my prediction.
So that's going to be my last question is what industries should entrepreneurs be focused on over maybe not 10 years, because that's just too long a horizon, but maybe over the next 3 to 5 years where you think great opportunity to build great companies, not only to service the Vietnam market, but they could even potentially, be unicorn companies. What are the industries people should focus on, or even industries to support those industries, businesses that can even support them, selling the picks and shovels to the gold miner.
Yeah, I think, like I always say, business is in the numbers, and what matters are what are big global mega trends. For example, a lot of countries are facing an aging population. And so I think there's opportunity in all kinds of services for an aging population. It could be anything from F&B, functional foods. It could be investment. It can be estate planning. It can be geriatric care or housing for aging population. There's just so much in there. Um, Plus, but I would say, okay, look at the data, look at the mega trends. Don't follow technology for the sake of technology. It's like if you get super excited about AI, it's kind of like getting super excited about the invention of the wheel. Like eventually, okay, it's ubiquitous. So what AI can do for some problem that humans have. Don't just look at a technology and then try to find a place to put it. Look for a problem and then think about what is the correct technology to solve this problem. Maybe it's AI, maybe not. And then most importantly, though, I think entrepreneurs ought to know what they're passionate about, because investors can feel your passion, and also you have to have the stamina to stick with it. If you look at a lot of startups, by the time we hear about them, they've already been working very hard for 7 years, just quietly building their traction, quietly building their brand. By the time we hear about them, if you look deep into their history, they started 7 years ago. Maybe they pivoted many times and changed their name many times and changed the team many times. But those founders who are still surviving are those who never give up. That's really important. Just never give up. That being
What
said,
kind? Yeah.
there's a time where you have to face the music and pivot. So don't get stuck on your idea. You might have to change your idea based on the market or based on what you discover as you go along.
What's this? I'm sorry, this goes along with this question that you were just answering. What entrepreneurs scare you that they may even have a good idea, they may even have some traction, but youth look at them and say, you know what, I just don't want to invest in them or be involved with them. What kind of entrepreneurs scare you?
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's not about scaring, it's just about sharing or not sharing values, and that's a very personal thing.
Yeah,
Um, so if I recognize that I'm not sharing values with someone, then I choose to take my attention elsewhere. Then again, I have to separate my personal values from business values, and our business values are very clear. We're here to inspire, connect, inspire, and empower entrepreneurs. And so as long as I'm doing that, I'm fulfilling my role and also my interest. I'm interested in doing that. Um, so that being said, those people who are resistant to connection, I would I would avoid. Um, those who are not inspired, I would avoid. And those who are not only empowering themselves, but empowering others. I think good founders also understand that their future role as an employer, they need to understand that their future role as a business, as an entity in society, are all really important things. And if I meet a founder who's just, I just want to get rich, I don't care what I do or how I do it, I just want money, uh, I probably would avoid that type. There are there are investors, there are mentors, there are people, they're okay with that. Money is number one, cold-hearted sharks. I'm not one of those people. I believe life is short, and at the end of the day, can't take money with us. It ought to be, you know, money's a tool, and we ought to be doing something that's providing different kinds of impact that we believe is important. Social impact, environmental impact, etc.
Aaron, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to speak with me today. And I think everyone who's going to be listening to it is going to get a lot out of it. And I know I certainly want to do more with Draper Startup House
Okay,
and be
great.
part of some of these groups that you're involved in, especially the AI groups, as I'm looking to learn more and help our students here at VinUniversity. I'm a serial entrepreneur as well. So I
That's
want
great.
to tap into that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark. I enjoyed my time a lot, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak. And I'm looking forward to when I'm coming up to VinUniversity to share some more information directly with your community.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. Have a great rest of your